Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Bible Basics with Pastor Steve. Sorry I got the email reminder out a little bit late today. It's because I made it in advance, trying to work ahead further, and then my workflow has changed, and I forgot to send it out. I was sitting down for dinner, and I said, "Uh-oh, got to run over and get that out real quick." So sorry about that. Let's see. Where's my script? Here we go. So, thank you for being here. Please say hi in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from if you're willing to do that. Want you to know that I just crunched the numbers for last year, and I know what our average attendance is between Facebook and YouTube, both church channels and my channels. Now, before I say the number, remember, not everybody watches live. Some people catch up later in the week, and some people catch up much later. But the looking at the individuals who watched more than a minute of this every week. I don't know who watched everything all the way through. Facebook and YouTube don't supply that, but they tell you who watched more than a minute, and the wisdom is people who stick with it for more than a minute are going to stick around as opposed to people that are just scrolling. So all that said, average attendance last year, 24, which makes me happy. So we're doing a survey of the Bible, one story at a time. We're doing all of the critical Bible stories, ones that I think that everybody should know, ones that you would have learned to sing songs about in Bible school back in the day, ones that would have been part of Sunday school or vacation Bible school once upon a time. And that's what we're doing. So I strongly suggest you read the text in advance, even if I sent it to you during dinner time the day of. So if you're not on that email distribution yet, go ahead and shoot me an email, and I will get you on there. And I know that you're not all, because the average attendance is 24, and there's only 23 of you on the list. So some of you are definitely not getting the script in advance. So, and by the way, that's screens, and I know some of you watch more than one person at a time. So 24 screens on average. So tonight we're talking about Daniel again. I decided not to go with Daniel chapter 2, even though there's a vision in there that some people think is important. I don't think it is so much for us. So I'm moving on to chapter 3 tonight. We're going to spend at least one more week on Daniel. Hey, Rob, Tony, and Gene are here. Good to see you. Man, you guys Southern Maryland got hit with the snow. We got good snow too, not like you guys did. So hope y'all are managing well down there. One of you posted on Facebook, "Hey, Northern friends, your weather is in my yard. Come get it." Anyway, let's go ahead and how many people we got so far tonight? We're at around 4. Like I said, not everybody watches live. In fact, apparently most people don't. So let's go ahead and open with a word of prayer, shall we? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, for you alone are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. All right, so Daniel chapter 3, retold in modern English. Good evening, Roseanne. King Nebuchadnezzar commissioned a golden statue to serve as an idol to be worshipped. It was 9 stories tall. He had all the important officials come to the dedication ceremony. The herald announced, "Citizens of the empire, you're about to hear music. Whenever you hear this piece played, you are to bow down and worship this golden idol. Anyone who doesn't will be burned alive in a furnace immediately." When they heard the music, they all bowed down as they were told. A group of Babylonians, or Chaldeans, depending on the translation, used this as an opportunity to persecute the Jews. They went to Nebuchadnezzar and said, "Long live the king. We've come to tell you that your Jewish counselors are not obeying your order to worship the golden idol. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do not serve your God." In a rage, the king ordered the 3 men to be brought to him. And he asked them directly, "Is it true that you refuse to worship my God? If you don't, I will have you thrown into the furnace. No God will save you." They replied, "We don't need to defend ourselves against you. Our God will save us. But even if he doesn't save us, we will still bow down to you. We still will not bow down to your golden idol. So let me say that again. Our God will save us, but even if he doesn't, we're still not going to do it. And the king was furious, and he ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times higher than normal. He had soldiers tie the men up and throw them into the furnace fully dressed. It was so hot that the soldiers burst into flames as they did it. Suddenly the king stood up and said, "Didn't we throw 3 men into the fire? Why do I see 4 walking around in there? And the 4th looks like a god." The king approached the furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out here." All the officials who were gathered there witnessed it when the 3 men walked out of the furnace. Neither their skin nor their clothes were burned. Not a hair on their head was singed. They didn't even smell like smoke. The king said, "All hail the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent an angel to save his servants who refused to worship any other god. I hereby decree that anyone who speaks ill of their God will be chopped into little pieces, and their house will be destroyed, because no other god could have done this." And the king gave Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego promotions. That's the story. So one of the things, I'm sorry, I skipped ahead. Once again, we are now into stories from the exile. And the exile only lasted about 70 years, only lasted 70 years. I mean, if we were all kicked out of the United States for 70 years, it wouldn't feel like a short period of time to me, but historically speaking, I guess it's not that long. But, that is 2 generations, as the Bible counts them, almost 2 generations. So the results were permanent. And when the exile finally ends, most people will stay where they are. And of the people who do return to Jerusalem, most of them had never actually been there before. Only the oldest remembered Israel before the fall of Jerusalem. It reminds me of Becky's dad was from Philadelphia. Becky's mom was from Indianapolis. And we used to go to a lot of family gatherings in Philadelphia before that generation that through them passed on. Big family gatherings in a park every summer, big family gathering at a restaurant every Christmas. And I remember one of Becky's second cousins asking her, after she graduated from college, they didn't understand why she hadn't moved back to Philadelphia yet. Why are you staying down there? Why haven't you moved back home? And that surprised her because Becky was born in Baltimore. She wasn't born in Philadelphia. She'd never lived in Philadelphia. She'd gone there to visit, but she was not from Philadelphia. But I guess if she was an Israelite, she'd see things differently. Hey, Brock, glad to join you. Glad to have you join us. I mean, you don't think it's streaming on OUMC official? That's good to know. Let me check and see what's going on here. Unable to connect. You are correct. It did not connect. Let me try again. Well, that's downright discouraging there, isn't it? Okay, so I'm going to upload the video after we are done to the official Otterbein channel. Man, that is frustrating. I wonder if we're going to have that problem again on Sunday. Anyway, so hopefully we're still live now. Brock, we still live? Because I messed with it. When you mess with it, it says I'm still live. Hopefully, it's still coming through. Give me some comments, guys. Let me know what's going on. All right. So getting back to what we were saying here. Says I've got 7. Okay. Yep, still here. Okay, very good. Okay, so the exile. We're in stories of the exile. And one of the things that we see happen during the exile is that the Jewish people, wherever they are, and from here on out, we can call them Jewish people. Prior to this, they were not known as that. They were the Hebrew people. Now they're the Jews. Wherever they go, they're successful as long as they are faithful to God while they're there. Everywhere they go, despite the risks that come with being faithful, they have an outsized influence on that society. In this story, we've got three young men, four if you count Daniel, who's not in this particular story, who are in the highest levels of the Babylonian government. The emperor knows them personally, and for people that were taken against their will into exile, that's pretty spectacular. And that outsized influence makes people jealous. It makes them hateful. Okay, I shouldn't say it makes them jealous and hateful. They choose to be jealous and hateful in response to that outsized influence. And I would say that pattern has continued into modern times today. Now, one last point about that before I move on. It would appear that this idol the king has made has an actual purpose. It's not just vainglory. My apologies to my fifth grade Sunday school teacher. Nebuchadnezzar has just dramatically expanded his empire. He rules an enormous area with lots of cultures, lots of nations, lots of religions. They each have their own religious system. He's trying to build a single national identity around a single god. And so to that end, he has created a new god, which people did, so that no one group would be perceived as being, he couldn't just go with one of the various gods the peoples worship because that would put them in an elevated stature. So he wanted to create a new one that would be the god of the Babylonian Empire. He wants everybody to worship this new god, and I'm sure he wanted them to worship above their old gods. So the officials that are gathered here, we know by the wording and the names of the types of officials, these were not local Babylonian officials. These were officials that had been brought in from all over the empire to attend this dedication service. So when King Cyrus of Persia eventually takes over, when the Persian Empire comes through, he's going to take a very different approach. This approach that he's taking did not work. And not just with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So what does this story tell us about God? Well, on the surface, this story would appear to tell us that God will protect people who are faithful to God. Now, I want to point out that different books in the Bible have different takes on this, and that's important to recognize. There are places where there are multiple voices in the Bible that disagree with each other. And I know some people have a hard time with that, and they say, well, if God's speaking through the Bible, then they're all really saying the same thing. Well, if you do that, what you're really doing is you're picking one voice and you're silencing all of the others. And if we have a high view of the scriptures, and I do, you can't do that. You can't silence the voices that don't seem to mesh with your understanding of what's going on. So the New Testament makes it clear that being faithful to God in the first century will actually make your life more difficult. It might actually get you killed. So that's a different perspective. But this is not just an Old Testament perspective versus a New Testament perspective thing. In the Old Testament, Ecclesiastes is a dissenting voice on this as well. Ecclesiastes, the writer makes it clear that he's looking back on his life. He has seen good people die young, specifically because they were good people, and he has seen wicked people live good, long, happy lives, and never had to pay the piper, so to speak. And I would say that this particular story actually acknowledges that stream of thought when it says, what do they say? They don't say just our God will protect us. They say our God will protect us, but you know what? Even if he doesn't, we're still not going to do it. I find that powerful. So what does this story then tell us about ourselves? It just amazes me how willing people are to throw other people under the bus for the sake of their own advancement. This story shows how that's not new. It's always gone on. You know, I've seen people do this. I think we all have. I'm more sympathetic. I don't excuse, but I'm more sympathetic when people are trying to deflect blame when they've screwed something up. Partly I'm sympathetic because I think in their minds at the time they actually believe what they're saying to be true. But then down the road they might have regrets that they had done it. When people are in trouble, they panic. When you panic, you're prone to trying to blame somebody else. You shouldn't do that, but that's human nature. It's sinful, but it's a sin that's common. But that's not what's going on here. This is not reactive. This is proactive. These are people who want to move up in society, move up in government, and they're going to do that by eliminating the people who are currently over them. That makes it much worse. So what does the story tell us about our relationships with God and with each other? Sometimes being faithful to God is dangerous. When we find ourselves in that situation, we need to be faithful and we need to trust God. But our faithfulness needs to be based on devotion. It can't be transactional. We don't have the right to expect a miracle. Well, I'm going to do this for God. I'm going to put my neck out there because I'm sure God will repay me for being faithful and save me. It can't be like that. Sometimes people who do the right thing get burned. Thankfully, not always. All right. So in the news, need a sip of coffee or something stronger. I'm sure you've all heard plenty about Bishop Marianne Buddy's homily at the prayer service at the National Cathedral earlier this week, part of which was directed not just directly, but personally at President Trump, who was sitting there in the front. And my Facebook feed has been cluttered with people who are either defending her or attacking her. People have lots to say, but I haven't seen anyone yet say what I'm about to say, at least not the way I'm going to say it, which is probably going to irritate people on both sides. But, that's what I do. That is my spiritual gift. It's generally considered in the ministry, it's generally considered unethical to call out somebody who was physically present by name in a sermon. If I were to preach a sermon on ethical behavior, for example, and I would have finished up that sermon by saying, and by the way, Bob, there in the front row, I'm talking about you. People are scared of you, and I hope you're going to have mercy on those people. That would be unethical. If I did that here in this congregation, it would cause a crisis. And, if that had been done to President Obama, I doubt that President Obama would have gone on Twitter and gone on a rant. I don't think he was the kind of guy that would have done that. But I can guarantee you all of his supporters would have done just that. And they would have had a right to be offended by that. Now, you could argue that it's different me calling out one of my own parishioners versus calling out the president if the president is sitting in front of you. And I'm not clear on that. Okay. Now, granted, the president's a public figure. Bob in the front row is not a public figure. I'm going to say that even if it is ethical, because the president's a public person, it's probably still not a good idea. Now, should we speak the truth? I'll say why in a minute. Should we speak the truth to power? Absolutely. There is a prophetic role in preaching. We should speak the truth to power. And we should do it with specificity. I'll say right now, President Trump has already enacted policies on day one that are probably going to have direct impacts on my family and on people that I care about. And even if they weren't going to have direct impacts on people I care about, I'd still think that they were bad policies. Um, and I'll just leave it at that for now. Um, but if I'm going to talk about that, what's the best way to do that? And what is the goal of doing that? And that's the important thing for me. Okay. If the purpose of this homily was to promote civil dialogue, that's what Bishop Buddy says. She says her goal was to promote civil discourse. I have a hard time understanding why she would have thought this was going to succeed in doing that. All it did was start yet another partisan argument. I cannot see any other way that could have played out. It was guaranteed to start another partisan argument. Shaming people in public is never going to make a situation better. It's just going to make people angry, especially people who were already angry when they came in the room. I mean, did anybody really think that he was going to respond by saying, oh, gee, that's terrible. You're right. I've changed my mind. Was that the goal? No, of course not. So if it's not likely to promote civil discourse, and you know that, and it doesn't make sense to do it in the name of civil discourse, if you know it's not going to change the person's mind in that context, why would you do it? And I suspect I hate assigning motives to somebody else I don't know. It's just that I see people doing this all the time, and I see the motive usually, and the motive is that it's going to fire up the people who already agree with me. There's no value in that. No minds were changed. People just got more entrenched. I know people want me to join the fight, but my fight is, and has always been, with political polarization. Trump is just a symptom. The virus is us. Ever since 9/11, the same thing has played out over and over, and both parties do it. I can think of 3 major important instances in that time period, 2 by one party, 1 by the other. I could probably think of more that would balance it out more. And this is what the pattern that plays out. There is a national crisis in the works. Something is about to go off the rail big time, or it already has. And one party says, this is a crisis, but we have a plan. And the other party says, this isn't a crisis. Everything's great. Everything's going exactly the way we wanted it to. And then the crisis gets worse until it starts to boil over. And one party keeps saying, hey, we've got a plan over here. We've been telling you for a while, we got this plan. The plan's asinine, but they have a plan. And the other party continues to insist, no, this isn't a crisis. We don't need to change what we're doing. The way we're doing it is the best way to do it in the world. Everybody else either wants to do it like us or should want to do it like us. There is no crisis. And eventually you get to a point, to a tipping point where most people in the country, and by most I mean more than half, see that it's a crisis, and they go with the only plan that is on the table, no matter how bad it is. And then there is a giant dramatic shift, either from the left to the right or from the right to the left, for the purpose of enacting this new policy. And it doesn't actually work because we never had a real conversation about it. Polarization and the lack of civil discourse and outright hatred on both sides has prevented us from dealing with a single problem honestly for 25 years now. And that's got to stop. And that's my fight. Don't forget to email me any questions you may have. I won't use your name if you don't ask me not, if you ask me not to. Don't forget to click like and share the video. If you have any feedback on the things I've said tonight, absolutely, I want to hear it. In the meantime, let's go ahead and have a word of prayer, shall we? God, give me the grace to accept with serenity the things that I cannot change. Give me the courage to change the things that must be changed, and give me the wisdom to know the difference. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. And that is my prayer for all of you good folks out there tonight. So until next time, I will see you either on church or online, in church or online, on church. Yeah, I'll see you either on church or in line right now, in church or online.